Prior to 1857, the socio-religious reform movements had two broad geographical proximities. One was the socio-religious reform movements in Bengal, and other was the socio-religious reform movements in Western India. So prior to 1857, and especially prior to Keshav Chandra Sen joining Brahmo Samaj, in Bengal, there were usually three strands of socio-religious reform movements which were visible. Or I would say there was mostly the Brahmo Samaj, and then there was a radical movement known as Young Bengal movement, and there was a conservative movement, a reaction to Brahmo Samaj and Young Bengal movement, which was known as Dharma Sabha. Right, it's a conservative movement. It was started by Radhakant Deb. In Western India, there would be two major movements. One was the Manav Dharma Sabha, now Manav Dharma Sabha was started by Durga Ram Mehta, and another would be Paramhans Mandali. Paramhans Mandali, again Durga Ram Mehta and Dadoba Pandurang with Bala Shastri Jambhekar. So we would be having Paramhans Mandali centered around Bombay and Manav Dharma Sabha centered around Surat. So altogether, broadly, prior to 1857, before 1857, we can see that there were two broad strands of socio-religious reform movement, one in Bengal in the form of Brahmo Samaj, other in the form of Young Bengal movement and reactionary Dharma Sabha by Radhakant Deb. And in Western India, there was Manav Dharma Sabha by Durga Ram Mehta, Paramhans Mandali by Durga Ram Mehta, Dadoba Pandurang, as well as Bala Shastri Jambhekar. The important movements. Let us understand the differences between first Bengal and Western India. What were the major difference with respect to socio-religious reforms movement? In Bengal, the socio-religious reform movement involved a significant form of studying of ancient texts. So ancient texts were translated into Bengali, they were interpreted, and in the light of ancient texts, there were reforms that were suggested. So in Bengal, the reform movement involved some form of interpretation of the ancient texts. But in Western India, if you look at Surat and Bombay, whether it is Manav Dharma Sabha or Paramhans Mandali, they involved doing away with all those customs and traditions which were derogatory to mankind. So it was more moved by the spirit of humanism rather than rationalism. There was a spirit of rationalism, but that rationalism was not an inquiry to the past ancient texts. But over here, the idea was to promote equality. So whereas the Brahmo Samaj, it had a separate establishment whereby Brahmo Samajists, they meditated, they denounced idol worship, they denounced polytheism, and they carried out social legislations so as to do away with Sati, so as to do away with Parda, so as to do away with polytheism, so as to do away with polygamy. In Western India, Paramhans Mandali, which was founded in 1849 by Dadoba Pandurang as well as Durga Ram Mehta, it was a secret meeting organization. It was a secret mandali. And they resorted to eating beef, eating wine, interdining, and they criticized Brahmanical orthodoxy. And so it was a secret society. It functioned like a secret meeting. And from 1849 up till 1860, it acted in that particular manner. So rather than resorting to criticism of the ancient text or interpreting the ancient text, the approach of Western India was more practical. denouncing with the social and cultural or social traditions which were derogatory or which was causing distinction between man and man. Now coming to Bengal and studying the Brahmo Samaj, Young Bengal movement and Dharma Sabha in greater detail. We have already studied Brahmo Samaj. It was established in 1829. It was based on the ideas of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So if I am talking about Brahmo Samaj, it was based upon Enlightenment ideas. So Brahmo Samaj as an organization aimed at practicing the Hindu religion, reforming the society in the light of rationalism, humanism and universalism. The Enlightenment ideas in Europe. So the Brahmo Samajists, they practiced meditation, they denounced polytheism, they denounced idol worship, they denounced priestcraft, they denounced practices derogatory to women like parda, polygamy, and they proposed or they supported monotheism. They upheld an ethical code of conduct with respect to their understanding of the society. They aimed at establishing a egalitarian society altogether. Contrary to this, if you look at Young Bengal movement, the Young Bengal movement, it was founded by Anglo-Indian Henry Vivian Derozio. So, whereas Brahmo Samaj, it was founded in 1829, Henry Vivian Derozio was very young. He was born in 1809, and from 1826 up till 1831, he was a professor in the Hindu college. As a professor in the Hindu college, Henry Vivian Derozio was greatly inspired by post-Enlightenment ideas. Now, it's a very important mark of distinction between Brahmo Samaj and Young Bengal movement. Let us Young Bengal movement. So when I say Young Bengal movement, it was based upon post-Enlightenment ideas, and Brahmo Samaj was based upon Enlightenment ideas. Let us study what were these post-Enlightenment ideas. The post-Enlightenment ideas were those ideas on which French Revolution, especially the second stage of French Revolution, was based upon, the radicals. So the post-Enlightenment thinkers, the post-Enlightenment ideas, they refrained from wasting time into what was there in the past. The post-Enlightenment thinkers, they aimed at completely discarding whatever is not useful, whatever was irrelevant in the past. It was a radical thought. So, inspired by French revolutionary ideas, Henry Vivian Derozio, he wanted all his disciples, he had attracted a young group of followers in the Hindu college, where he was the professor. And he inspired all his followers to subject every aspect of social life, every aspect of political life, to the spirit of rationalism, to the spirit of inquiry. And with this spirit of inquiry, rationalism, Henry Vivian Derozio promoted radical ideas such as beef eating, wine drinking, condemning idol worship. So Derosians, they move about the streets, proudly practicing those activities which were considered derogatory in the religious pantheon. Derosians, they ridiculed those practices which could not stand the test of rationality, reason. So Young Bengal movement displayed a spirit of defiance. It displayed a spirit of new inquiry. Derosians politically wanted Britishers to introduce reforms such as trial by jury, separation of executive and judiciary, They also criticized the exploitation of peasantry by officials. In fact, the Young Bengal movement was highly patriotic. Henry Vivian de Rosio, although he was an Anglo-Indian, he took pride in calling himself Indian rather than an English descent. So it was a radical movement. We will say that Young Bengal movement was radical in character. It was based upon post-enlightenment ideas compared to Brahmo Samaj, which was more moderate as it was based upon enlightenment ideas. Both had coexisted at one point of time. So you can say, whereas in 1829, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was founding the Brahmo Samaj, Henry Vivian de Rosio from 1826 till 1831 was preaching his radical ideas in the form of Young Bengal movement. And both these movements, they died down by 1830s. In 1830, Raja Ram Mohan Roy will go to England to contest a case for Mughal emperor. And in 1831, Young Bengal movement, Henry Vivian de Rosio, he will die of cholera. So by 1830s, both Brahmo Samaj and Young Bengal movement, their spirit will fizzle out slowly. However, while these movements were active, there was a reactionary movement under Dharma Sabha. And this reactionary movement was by Radhakant Dev. Like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Radhakant Dev was an intellectual. He knew Arabic, Persian, Sanskrit. He was a well-read individual. In fact, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Radhakant Dev had promoted Western education. Radhakant Dev promoted English education. He helped David Hare establish Hindu College. So Radhakant Dev was also aware that English education was must for making Indian society progressive. However, with respect to social questions such as abolition of Sati, caste system, child marriage, Radhakant Dev did not like the English interfering in Indian social customs, social life. Therefore, Radhakant Dev, along with his friend, established Dharma Sabha, where he opposed abolition of Sati in 1829. So if we talk about Bengal, in Bengal by 1830s, various strands of social reform movements had emerged. Some were conservative, some were moderate, and some were radical. And by 1830s, we see that there was a slight dip in the activities of Brahmo Samaj. Because from 1833, after death of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, up till 1843, when Debendranath Tagore joined Brahmo Samaj, the Brahmo Samaj was ineffective. Young Bengal movement died down, especially after death of Henry Vivian de Rosio in 1831. And Dharma Sabha, it carried out the conservative reaction against this reformist movement. The reformist movement, especially Brahmo Samaj, it received a boost when Debendranath Tagore he decided to take over the administration. Debendranath Tagore had established Tattva Bodhini Sabha, and he had a magazine named as Tattva Bodhini Patrika. Debendranath Tagore was an enlightened thinker, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was influenced by the Brahmo Samaj ideas. And Debendranath Tagore, who was friend of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Akshay Kumar Datta, he denounced practices derogatory to women such as widow, such as sati, such as polygamy, parda, and he supported social legislations, progressive legislation to uplift the position of women and improve their status. He wanted female education. So Debendranath Tagore, when he became the head of Brahmo Samaj, he took Brahmo Samaj all over Bengal. So by 1844, Brahmo Samaj, Brahmo ideas had been spread all over Bengal. In 1844, under the leadership of Debendranath Tagore, the Brahmos, they aimed at bringing about important legislation. It was under this influence only, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who was a Sanskrit scholar, principal of Sanskrit College, he played an important role in bringing about Widow Remarriage Act of 1856. The point is, for the Brahmo Samajists, especially up till the Debendranath Tagore, they aimed at supporting social legislations on the basis of ancient texts. So the Brahmo Samajas, they never repudiated the Vedas. They never set aside the Vedas. In some way, they always justified social legislations on the basis of ancient texts. Unlike Young Bengal movement, who had discarded Vedas completely. And if you talk about Dharma Sabha, it had upheld Vedas. So it had criticized any form of social reform. So up till 1857, we see socio-religious reform movement in Bengal taking shape, especially after Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who laid down his basis. So from 1803 up till 1833 was the time period when Raja Ram Mohan Roy gave his ideas, liberal ideas to Bengal, led to the establishment of Brahmo Samaj. And then after a slight dip from 1833 till 1843, Brahmo Samaj was revived by Debendranath Tagore. From 1843 onwards up till 1858, we will see till the time Keshav Chandra Sen joins Brahmo Samaj. That's a different phase of historical development after 1857, when Debendranath Tagore would be developing the Brahmo Samaj. And when we talk about Young Bengal movement, it shall fizzle away after 1831, and we already know the Radhakant Dev, he shall continue with the Dharma Sabha. Now coming to the Western India. In Western India, Manav Dharma Sabha, it was founded in 1844. There were two important reformers. One was Durga Ramji Mehta, and other was Dadoba Pandurang. So if we talk about two important organization prior to 1857, it was Manav Dharma Sabha in Surat, and another was Paramhans Mandali in Bombay. So Manav Dharma Sabha was earlier organization established in 1844, and if you talk about Paramhans Mandali, it was established by, yes, we had the same Durgaram Mehta. Second was Dadoba Pandurang, a very important reformer. And there is also Bal Shastri Jambhekar, a very important socio-religious reformer. Paramhans Mandali, prior to Prarthana Samaj, we will see that Prarthana Samaj would come into existence only after 1857, when Keshav Chandra Sen from Bengal will come to Bombay. And he will play an important role in establishing Prarthana Samaj. But prior to that, prior to 1857, it was Paramhans Mandali. It's a very important organization, you have to remember. So Paramhans Mandali was moved by ideas of humanism, rationalism. But the approach was more practical. The thinkers, the members of the Paramhans Mandali, they did not waste their time interpreting the Vedas. They did not waste their time trying to bring about a basis to social reforms from the Vedas. However, Paramhans Mandali aimed at criticizing the Brahmanical orthodoxy, criticizing caste-based distinction, and practicing those customs which were frowned upon, like interdining. So under Paramhans Mandali, it was a secret organization. All the members, they used to meet one fine day. They used to eat beef, they used to eat wine, they used to have interdining. They condemned orthodoxy. Other than emphasizing upon religious aspect, Paramhans Mandali was more associated to the social. So it condemned orthodoxy, condemned the restrictions based upon intercaste dining. It condemned all forms of restrictions based upon eating. So prior to 1857, we had a pattern of socio-religious reform movement, one in Bengal, other in Western India. In Bengal, in the form of Brahmo Samaj, Young Bengal movement, and the Dharma Sabha, which was a reactionary movement. And in Western India, we had Manav Dharma Sabha and the Paramhans Mandali.